Okay, so this month we're studying the New Covenant, and I talked with Bob Christopher yesterday. He says, "Yeah, we're getting into the application part of it. How does it apply to your life?"
Yeah.
And he asked me to cover something this today, and I'm happy to do that. I have some experience with this, so I can talk about it. If you've got a Bible and you're not driving in a car, turn to Genesis chapter 2, and in verses 2 and 3, you'll find this statement. By the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work, rested from all his work which God had created and made. There's some interesting words there.
Yeah.
The first one is completed. This word means to consummate or finish. It's a statement that God had completed all of creation. This is a defense against evolution thinking.
Right.
An evolutionist won't believe this. That's okay. It's their right not to believe. But if you're a Christian, claim to be a Christian, this verse tells you that creation was done. It doesn't tell you that God kind of started it and walked away just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
He had completed it. Rested means just that. However, you can't think of it the way we think of rest. God did not just stop and sit down and have a cold drink,
Right.
with the fan blowing on him. No, he continued to support the entire creation that he had just completed. He rested from creation because there was no more creating to do. Keep that in mind. We'll return to it. Blessed means quite literally to kneel, salute, or greet. It's in some ways a way to say hello, but what God did on this day was to say hello to rest.
Yeah.
It's a very friendly term, and it's a happy term. And then sanctified, even in Hebrew, means the same thing as sanctified in Greek. Means to be set apart, to be holy, etc. And so God came to the seventh day, and all of creation was completed. And he said, wow, this is cool. I'm sure he didn't say that.
Yeah.
But when I've completed a project, it means a lot to me, and it works. It's just there. You're just so satisfied with the result. And God was perfectly satisfied with his perfect creation, and so he rested from creation because there was no more to do.
Right.
All right? Note, in this passage, nothing on the seventh day regarding evening and morning. If you go to Genesis 1 and you read the list, every day had an evening and a morning, the first day, the second day, all the way to the sixth day. The seventh day didn't have an evening and morning. The seventh day did not, even when we know there was a physical evening and morning associated with it. This rest, blessing, and sanctification were spiritual realities intended to be eternal. God is spirit. He had just created physicality. No one had imagined such a thing before, at least in the ways that he did it.
Yeah.
And he gets done, and it's perfect. It's the most awesome thing ever imagined in the history of ever. And he's got Adam and Eve there, and they're perfect, and the animals are perfect, and the plants are perfect, and the firmament is perfect. Everything in the universe is perfect. And God sits down and goes, yes, this is done.
Even warthogs?
Even warthogs. Well, I don't know. Warthogs might be the result of sin, but we'll hold that to a different time. So God wasn't saying, I'm done, I'm walking away. He says, I'm done with this, and now I will continue to support it for the rest of time.
Yes.
All right? Okay, so Adam and Eve sin. They rebel. What happened? They died spiritually. What does that mean? Amongst other things, it means they lost the rest that they were born into, so to speak. They were born innocent. They were born perfect, created that way, and they lost that. And all the way up until Israel was freed from slavery and the Mosaic covenant was given, people didn't have this rest. And so in Exodus, God gave them rest of a form. Starts in verse 8. I won't read that whole commandment, but it starts with, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And then it goes through verse 10 and explains a whole bunch of stuff. So humanity lost Sabbath when Adam and Eve rebelled. That was in Genesis 3. They died spiritually, so no rest was available. God restored a shadow of creation rest with the Mosaic covenant, right? He had finished his work of freeing them from slavery, so now reminded them of their spiritual need of rest. They didn't know from rest.
Right.
I mean, they've been slaves for 400 years.
years.
You know, they got up, they did what they did when they were told to do it, and they went home when they were told to go home. And if they weren't told to go home, you didn't go home. You kept working. As he did at the introduction to the commandments, remember, the commandments start off with, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. So he did with the weekly Sabbath, a little later in this passage. For in 6 days the Lord made heavens and earth. That is, he declared in both places his sole right to their belief and practice. I am God, I did this, therefore I can claim this of you. And what he claimed of them was a 24-hour period of time. The Mosaic Sabbath had a definite beginning and end, sundown Friday through sundown Saturday. This is how we know it was a shadow of the promised Messiah. It wasn't the replacement for the Sabbath in Eden,
Right.
which was intended to be eternal spiritual rest in God, the Creator. But he gave it to them and said, I want 1/7 of your time. And I want you to worship me only.
Yeah.
And I'll leave the other 6 days for you to work. And sadly, they never got this, but we'll get to that. Fast forward to Hebrews chapter 3. In verses 18 and 19, it says this. And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? See, told you, you got to obey or die.
Yeah.
It continues. So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief. So disobedience is equated to unbelief in chapter 3. The people who received the Mosaic covenant never entered God's rest. Why? Because they never believed him. Right? Move to Hebrews 4. In verse 2, it says, For indeed we have had good news preached to us, just as they also. But the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. So now what he's done is equate disobedience, unbelief, and lack of faith. And in fact, according to chapter 2, even Joshua, who was another model of Jesus, did not provide Israel rest. Again, the writer here is setting up his point regarding a shadow fulfilled in Christ. In fact, the whole letter of Hebrews is nothing but here's a shadow, here's Jesus the reality. Here's another shadow, here's Jesus the reality. In this context, he's talking about the shadow of rest, and that Jesus is the fulfillment of that shadow. Is that good news? Well, yeah, but how good is it? Go to verses 9 to 11 in Hebrews 4. So there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. And for many, many years, I took that verse and said, see, if you don't keep Saturday as the Sabbath, you're lost. Completely missing the point of what he had just said. So what I was doing was trying to substitute my observance of a 24-hour period of time for Jesus.
Yeah.
It continues. For the one who has entered his rest has himself also rested from his works, as God did from his. Therefore, let us be diligent to enter that rest, so that no one will fall through following the same example of disobedience. We already know in this passage that disobedience, unbelief, and lack of faith are the same thing.
Yes.
Okay? And that's what I was showing in my old life. Well, Lord, I've done this and this and this and this. And he looked at me and went, so?
Oh.
He says to me, now, I created the universe, and I created it perfect. Adam and Eve messed up. You were born in Adam. So you, by definition, have messed up, but I took care of this. I sent Jesus. Jesus completed the problem of sin, wiped it out once and for all, came back from the dead, was resurrected, destroying the problem of death. Mm-hmm. And then he hands it to me, hands it to you, hands it to anyone who believes, right? Who are the people of God? People of God are those who have accepted Jesus, who have been declared sons and daughters of God.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We now rest from our labor of trying to save ourselves by resting in Jesus, who succeeded on our behalf. His victory over sin and death is now our victory over sin and death. We are secure. Nothing can separate us from his love. No one can snatch us out of his hand. Truly, this is rest. So take a look at Jesus, say thank you for your completed work, sit down and have a cold drink and say, this is the life.